opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only
South Africa. I know that it's 5 a.m. in Nairobi. And 7 o'clock already in Abidjan. So some people, the sun has been out for a while.
Yeah, well, we're going to catch up in just a bit. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Asanda, Beda. Of course, lots coming up in this hour. And maybe let's take a moment to thank the team. On production is Tumelo Mukwena. On that's technical production, rather. On production, Tlengiwe Mabaso, Joey Likhodi, and Pumutso Ramagadza. Our news is brought to you by Onele Nzinzi on today. Economics news by Bontle Headbush, and our sports news by Musibudi Makura. Of course, we are on social media, and the lady that handles that is Talent Butelezi. You can find us as at Channel Africa 1. That's our handle across all the platforms. I don't think we've got one that we've missed, actually.
No, you've got it. The whole
all of them were
there. I think maybe just the security team. That's it.
Yeah.
All right, let's catch you up with the news. Here's Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and a very good morning to our listeners. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's looking forward to meeting his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House tomorrow. This is according to the presidency. Ramaphosa arrived in Washington, D.C. yesterday. He will get briefed from various ministers who are also in the U.S. to support Ramaphosa's engagements. Details on tomorrow's meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump will become clearer later today, Sean Bryce Peace reports.
President Ramaphosa was expected to receive a comprehensive briefing from various ministers, including Ronald Lamola of International Relations, who was expected to arrive in the USA directly from bilateral meetings in France and the Netherlands. While there are a number of vexing issues, including the Afrikaner refugee matter, the delegation is laser-focused on moving the economic relationship forward, either within the AGOA framework or ironing out the beginnings of a fresh bilateral agreement in the context of the well-established transactional nature that the current occupant in the White House prefers. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau is expected to be central to those discussions as well.
The Economic Freedom Fighters leader in South Africa, Julius Malema, is meanwhile questioned why members of NGO AfriForum, that includes Carly Kriel, Ernest Roets and Gerenal, have not left for the U.S. This says AfriForum, an Afrikaner interest group, has been allegedly peddling lies to the U.S. that white farmers in South Africa are victims of a genocide and land grabs. The misinformation by AfriForum has resulted in the U.S. President Donald Trump offering white Afrikaner farmers refugee status in the U.S. Malema says most white Afrikaners in South Africa will not leave the country because they are comfortable.
Why is Kriel not going to America? Because he's the one who said people are being killed. Kriel must lead by example and go to America. Roots must lead by example and go to America. Gerenal must lead by example and go to America. They can't go because they live a good life here in South Africa. When they go to America, they are going to become hobos with immediate effect.
The cases against Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu have been postponed until the 2nd of June. The cases are in connection with the alleged publication of false information online and another related to treason. There was heavy police presence at the court, with some security personnel wearing balaclavas. Spokesperson of the Chadema, Beda says the details surrounding the case remain sketchy.
The government actually said they have 15 witnesses against that are going to go against Tundu Lissu, and they're going to. They said they will bring them to court on the 2nd of June. They refused to disclose the 15 people's names. So we also had Chadema also had eight witnesses, of which the people will be disclosed on the 2nd of June as well.
Lastly, at least 20,000 people have fled Mate town following increasing attacks by Islamist militants in Nigeria's northeastern Borno state. This is according to Governor Babagana Zulum, who visited Mate following a raid on an army base last week in which militants temporarily overran the installation. 5 soldiers were killed and others went missing in the attack. 4 years after residents returned to the town that was once controlled by insurgents, Borno State has witnessed an upsurge in attacks by suspected Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa province assailants this year. Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, you can send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 459. News. I'm
ABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Liverpool beaten 3-2 by Brighton Hove and Albion in their penultimate match of the Premier League this season. And Abanchida said to arrive back home later on this morning following their triumph at the Africa Cup of Nations tournament over the weekend. Details coming up at 6:30.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
With us, Africa, on this Tuesday, the 20th of May. After the news, every day we take a look at some stories you may have missed that you need to get knowledge on, and also just to see what we could be expecting in terms of developments throughout the day or the week. And we call it the Africa Roundup. So let's get into that now at 7 minutes past 6 Central African Time. We start with South Africa, where the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, arrived in the United States of America on Monday. He's expected to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House on Wednesday to reset and revitalize bilateral relations between South Africa and the United States. Sherwin Price-Peace reports from Washington.
The South African delegation would certainly have us believe that the focus of this discussion is going to be purely on trade, tariffs, and the future economic relationship. But there is so much in this conversation that the waters essentially in pour has been muddied by the narrative that has emanated from the highest levels of the White House. There is an executive order that has been signed by President Donald Trump impugning the governance of South Africa, the human rights record of South Africa, in particular as it relates to white Afrikaners who are already arriving in the country as refugees. The South African delegation believes they've addressed this. They believe it is an untruth and therefore needs to be, buried.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame says the African continent can no longer rely on others for its own peace and security, urging African countries to do what it takes to ensure that peace and security is not outsourced from elsewhere. He made the call at the inaugural International Security Conference on Africa, which opened in Kigali on Monday.
For far too long, our security has been treated as a burden to be managed by others, with minimal input from us, and often without the benefit of our context or consent. This approach has failed to deliver both for Africa and for the world. What begins here is more than a conference. It is a deliberate effort to change both the narrative and the substance of how Africa engages with the global security debates.
A BBC investigation has uncovered evidence that children are being trafficked into illegal mines and sexually abused across South Africa. The BBC's Maeni Jones sent this report from Johannesburg.
The BBC has spoken to former illegal miners, charities and researchers who say that criminal mining gangs are recruiting children as young as 15 from neighbouring countries. Many children end up being sexually abused by adult miners who spend months underground without going to the surface. The BBC has confirmed that more than 30 children were in a mine at Stilfontein in the northwest, where during a standoff with police, food and water to the shaft was restricted. Save the Children, who interviewed some of the underage miners, confirmed that some of them claimed to have been sexually abused.
People in at least 70 countries are missing out on medical treatment due to funding cuts to aid programs, the World Health Organization said, adding that it also faces major financial challenges. The WHO Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, said in an address to the World Health Assembly, which kicked off in Geneva on Monday.
Many ministers have told me that sudden and steep cuts to bilateral aid are causing severe disruption in their countries and imperiling the health of millions of people. In at least 70 countries, patients are missing out on treatments, health facilities have closed, health workers have lost their jobs, and people face increased out-of-pocket health spending. Although this is a challenge, many countries also see this as an opportunity to leave behind an era of aid dependency and accelerate the transition to sustainable self-reliance based on domestic resources. We're doing our best to support countries to make that transition.
The Kenya Wildlife Service and Liwa Conservancy over the weekend completed a week-long ear notching operation aimed at better tracking and protecting the region's growing rhino population. Nima Pratton reports.
Dominic Moringa, head of conservation at Liwa, tells Reuters they are selective about which rhinos they tag.
Identify animals that are supposed to receive the code based on their ears, their age, also sex, and also the species, if it's black or white rhino. And we develop that list carefully to ensure that the candidates we are notching are okay in terms of age. Also, we observe issues like pregnancy. If it's a pregnant female, we give it time. We cannot put it down while it's pregnant. We cannot also put young ones that are below 2 years into drugs or that thing.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup, where we bring you a concise catch-up of all the top stories that played out in the last 24 hours. And we do this to keep you informed and up to date. We'll have another roundup for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. We'll take a closer look at some of the stories that have been in the headlines in East Africa.
The morning.
6:15 Central African time, and as I said, it's time for us to turn our attention to East Africa, and a number of key developments are unfolding across the region, from political tension in Tanzania and diplomatic disputes involving Kenya's former Justice Minister Martha Karua, to a tragic suicide bombing in Somalia and an unusual legal battle involving the headline stories and explore the deeper implications. We're now joined by journalist and founder of grassroots journalism in Kenya, Dennis.
Salama sana, Peter. How is South Africa?
So good to have you on the program as always. So let's start with the situation involving Kenya's former Justice Minister, Martha Karua. She says that she was deported from Tanzania to stop her from attending Tundu Lissu's court hearing. What exactly happened? What do we know?
Thank you so much, Peter Ndoro. Of course, this is now a diplomatic, issue between Tanzania and Kenya, because we are talking about Mother Karua, who is the former Constitution and Justice related minister during former President Mwai Kibaki's era, and she is a renowned legal and a very senior counselor in this country. And we've seen Mother Karua standing in solidarity with the opposition leader in Uganda, that is Kizza Besigye. And I remember she was denied entry to go and represent Kizza Besigye during his trial in the military or the court-martial in Uganda. And the problem we are now having, or we are seeing with her being deported, actually, she was deported back to Kenya. She was denied entry at the Dar es Salaam International Airport. And as per the information that we received from Tanzanian authorities, of course, we've seen President Mama Samia Suluhu saying that she will not allow such kind of nonsense to happen in our country, and she is in charge of the country. And yesterday she was saying that of course the Kenyan activists and other lawyers, activists, have tarnished, the bad name of Kenya, and they will not allow such people to come to our country and try to paint the picture of her country as a bad country. And it is so sad because Mother Karua is a renowned a lawyer in East Africa and Africa at large, for them being denied entry to represent opposition leader, that is Tundu Lissu. That was really sad. And not only that, former Chief Justice, that is Willie Mutunga, he was also denied entry, and he was deported back to Kenya, and he arrived yesterday at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. But luckily, former Chief Justice, that is David Maraga, was allowed, and he was able to go into the court session, and even through the videos and the pictures that we've been seeing, he was able to talk to the embattled opposition leader Tundu Lissu.
Talking about Tundu Lissu, he's appeared in court in Tanzania facing several charges, including treason and publishing false information. What are the details of these charges? I mean, this is a man who's endured quite a lot in opposition politics. I think he was there was an assassination attempt that resulted in serious injury in previous years.
Yes, Peter, it is very interesting story when you talk about Tundu Lissu. Remember, Tundu Lissu, he was shot 21 times. That was in 2021. And he went into exile, that is Belgium, if I'm not wrong. And he came back, and the moment he came back, he announced that he will be vying for the presidency. And now this is when troubles started. And the charges that is being accused of, that is two charges. One of them, that is, it is alleged that he was inciting the members of the Chadema, that is opposition party, and he declined to sign the electoral code. You see, what it means with that is that he was his party rather has been barred from participating into October elections. And when we've been going through to see what really transpired, because Peter, treason-related charges, we really understand, or we know what these means, because I've seen young people, some of them, activists in Tanzania saying, just trying to tell the opposition that, we are not going to participate in the election. How can that amount to a treason? And there were also some concerns that he was trying to destabilize the country, to bring mayhem in the country, but the charges and the allegation that he is denying. And remember, if he is found guilty, that amounts to a death penalty, as per the Tanzanian laws, and most of the laws in East Africa. So we don't, as we sit where we sit, we don't really understand what will happen after this, because remember, the elections are now coming in October, and there are conversations that this is one of the tactics by government to ensure that Tundu Lissu, who is now becoming a threat to Tanzanian government, is not going to participate in the October elections.
All right, let's go back to Kenya. There's been quite a stir about this story, the government's decision to close down the Freemasons' Hall over unpaid land rates. Why is this story capturing so much public attention, Dennis?
This is a very interesting conversation in the past 1 week about the famous East Africa Freemason Hall. I think it is the headquarters of the Freemason Society in East Africa. And remember, Nairobi County, under the leadership of the governor Johnson Sakaja, has been, they have a campaign to clamp down all assets, buildings that have not been, their land rates have not been paid. And what caught the attention of the people is the Freemason hall here in Nairobi. That is State House Road, and it is alleged that they have not paid the land rates that amounts to 19 million Kenya shillings, and of course most Kenyans went to social media and remember Freemason. It is not well, interpreted in Kenya. People say, "Oh, this is now the member of the secret group society, the Illuminati." They've been saying this, and they were like, if the Freemason members cannot pay the land rates, that means the economy is really doing bad to a point that people who are supposedly to have money, they do not have money to pay the land rates. So a lot of young people on social media trying to mimic, trying to to talk about, and I saw a conversation. People are saying, we'd rather now stick to God, because even these the so-called Freemason members or the Illuminati, they do not have money. And the other day, the chairman, is called George, came out and said that they have a conversation with the Nairobi County to settle down the said amount that amounts to 19 million Kenya shillings. So it is a conversation that is still going on in the country about the secret group, and the chairman came out clearly, said that this is not a secret group, but this is a society that believes in the values, the virtues of what they believe in. So we are still waiting to see what will unfold, because as we speak now, the whole has been clamped down.
All right, let's move to Somalia, where a suicide bombing at a military recruitment site has reportedly killed at least 10 people. What do we know about this attack, and do we know who's behind it?
Very sad story from Mogadishu. As per the Reuters and Al Jazeera, this is an exercise that was taking place in the outskirts of Mogadishu, that is Damanyo military base. Remember, Damanyo military base is a strategic base, and recently the recruitment for young people to join the Somalia military forces to strengthen the force, and this was just a normal exercise. Young people came out in large numbers for the recruitment exercise. And remember, when these recruitment exercise is taking place, young people have to key. Some have to remove their tops because this is a requirement during the exercise. As per the Al Jazeera, it is said that there is a tuk-tuk that came and stopped where these young people were aligning, and the exercise was taking place. So one of the suicide bombers came out of the tuk-tuk and went straight to where these young people were keying, and he blew himself. And as per the report, that is the Associated Press, it is said that the driver of the tuk-tuk didn't know that he was carrying a suicide bomber, and he was interviewed, and so many young people the recruits were injured, about that of them, who are now taken to the nearby hospital. But apparently, sadly, 6 died on the spot, and 4 later succumbed to injuries. And remember, these blast is coming a few days after the assassination of one of the Somalia's military officers was assassinated last week. That is the Battalion 26 Commander Iraim in the Iraim region. And remember, Tanzania is still facing a lot of attacks, and Al-Shabaab have confirmed that they really participated in this attack.
Dennis, we're going to have to leave it there. As always, thank you so much. Asante sana, kwaheri.
Thank you so much. And as a Mamelodi Sundowns fan, I'm still celebrating the victory.
Journalism, Kenya. Dennis Beru joining us there from Nairobi. It's time for your news headlines. Here is Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Peter. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says he is looking for
International station that speaks to Africa.
Trump at the White House tomorrow. Details on tomorrow's meeting between the two will become clearer in the day. The cases against Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu have been postponed until the 2nd of June. The cases are in connection with the alleged publication of false information online and another related to treason. And the United Nations humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher says the first delivery of aid to Gaza in 11 weeks is a drop in the ocean. He has welcomed Israel's decision to ease its blockade of the territory, but says more supplies are urgently needed. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
32 minutes past 6. Let's get our first update in the world of sports. Here's Musibudi Makura. Well, the full one, because we had headlines earlier. Good morning, Musibudi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Very good morning from the sports desk. Now, Premier League champions Liverpool twice led a lead slip as Brighton Hove Albion fought back in style to gain a victory that boosts their slim hopes of securing European football qualification next season. Now, substitute Jack Hirschenwood proved to be the match winner as he made an instant impact and also headed in Matt O'Reilly's cross in the 85th minute, with the goal being given following a check by the video assistant referee, also known as VAR, after it had originally been ruled offside. Now the Reds led 1-0 and then 2-1 at half-time before the Seagulls recovered well to move 8th on the Premier League table, 3 points above Brentford. Now the Seagulls travel to Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday for the final day of the season, and the team that finishes 8th may just qualify for the UEFA Conference League. However, for that to happen, Chelsea would need to beat Real Betis in the 2025 final on Wednesday, the 28th of May, and then finish 7th in the Premier League standings or 6th, as long as Newcastle United then come in 7th position. Now, Arne Slot's side won the title with 4 games to spare, but have now picked up only 2 points since then. They become the first side in the Premier League era to not win any of the next 3 games in the same campaign after becoming champions. Onto this story now. Wheelchair Basketball South Africa President Charles Saunders unpacks why South Africa wins most of their bids to host continental as well as global competition. He also reacts to the recent announcement that the first ever Wheelchair Basketball 3x3 Open World Championship will be hosted by South Africa in the Northwest Province. That's from the 1st until the 3rd of August. It's a monumental event and the very first time South Africa will be hosting this event, and Saunders talks about the importance of SA being the host event for the site.
Well, first of all, it is the support that comes through from radio stations like Channel Africa to get the news out to everybody, and the excellent backup by the community. Without that, we would never be able to do what we do. South Africa, we know, is a sports-loving nation, and it is the destiny to come through to. We have the facilities, we have the people that can organize, and we are the people that feel that to put the step forward is to be able to allow everybody else in South Africa to do the same.
Saunders, who's also the Chief Executive Officer of Wheelchair Basketball South Africa, explains the inclusion of the 3x3 format of the game in comparison to the 5x5.
Yes, we're very proud to say that Wheelchair Basketball was the organization that put forward to the world and said, why can we not do 3x3 like the able-body does? Why can't Wheelchair Basketball do it? And the world body took about 3 years before they made a decision, and eventually they said, yes, let us do it. Because, number one, 3x3 is a cheaper version of the 5-man game, first of all. Secondly, from a cost perspective, when you're buying wheelchairs, you only have to worry about wheelchairs for 3 people rather than for 12 people on a basketball court.
On to tennis news now. Arthur Ashe Stadium, the US Open's showcase court, is said to be expanded as part of an $800 million renovation project at Flushing Meadows, with the United States Tennis Association having announced this on Monday. Now, the USTA has described the proposed work at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center as the largest singles investment in US Open history. It also includes a plan to increase it by 2,000 the capacity of the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which currently hosts just a little over 23,000 and is the largest tennis arena in the world. Now, the stadium is set to get a new main entrance with facilities inside for fans to be modernized. Further plans also include a new player performance center at Flushing Meadows with expanded indoor as well as outdoor warm-up areas for players. The USTA also intends to fund the renovation project itself, with work to be done in phases between the tournaments to minimize disruption, and also hopes to get it completed by the year 2027. And finally, in cricket news, teenager Thomas Rue scored an unbeaten century as a professional club county club select 11 claimed a 138-run win over Zimbabwe. Now, this was the tourist lone warm-up match before their once-off test against England. The PCC side, coached by former England captain Andrew Flintoff, started the final day of the 3 in Leicester on 387 for 5 in their second innings. The test match, the first between England as well as Zimbabwe in nearly 22 years, starts at Nottingham's Trent Bridge on Thursday, with the fixture scheduled for 4 days rather than the 5 now standard in Red Bull Internationals. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the SAWA. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126, and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of November, so yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
And it's time now to say good morning to Buntle Headbush as she gives us an update on what's been happening on the business, economics and commerce front. Good morning, Buntle.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good morning to all our listeners this morning. In our first look at the business news, the Agri-Western Cape in South Africa says commercial farmers exporting to the USA will be hard hit if the AGOA agreement is not renewed. President Cyril Ramaphosa is heading a delegation to the US to discuss, amongst others, trade and tariff agreements. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, grants preferential access to the US markets for qualifying exports from South Africa, which includes citrus fruits and wines. The US President Donald Trump's unilateral hiking of tariffs early this year unsettled local citrus and wine farmers. Agri-West Cape CEO Yanni Stradom says farmers will have to go back to the drawing board if the agreement is not rekindled.
75% of all agricultural produce exported to the United States are covered under the AGOA agreement. So it's a huge benefit for the agricultural sector. In terms of our opinion regarding the renewal of the agreement, I'm personally of the opinion that given what's going on in the global trade market around the world, I don't think it will be renewed, and we will have to have a plan B.
Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa aims to discuss business opportunities for Elon Musk's companies during his visit to Washington this week. President Ramaphosa's spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, says one of the points discussed could be a potential proposal for automotive company Tesla, which is led by Musk, to receive favorable tariffs on its imports into South Africa in exchange for building electric vehicles charging stations. Magwenya said the issue of licensing for Musk's satellite company Starlink would also be discussed. South Africa's Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Sindisiwe Chikunga, has lauded the banking and financial sector's continued support. Chikunga, who spoke at a roundtable held in Johannesburg, said the aim was to foster inclusivity by engaging corporate stakeholders. The minister said it was pivotal to also engage in G20-related discussions during and beyond South Africa's G20 presidency. She said with these efforts, more support will also be extended to women, youth, and persons with disabilities.
What I liked about the presentations was the issue of emphasizing the collaboration among themselves, to say there are resources, but maybe we may not even as finance institutions be effectively impactful on what we are doing because we work in silos. If we were to share the resources that we have and work together, we may even be more impactful.
Codal Minerals expects to receive an export permit soon for 27,000 metric tons of lithium concentrate stockpiled at its Buguni project in Mali, having previously reported export delays because of regulatory hurdles. The delays come against a backdrop of declines in global lithium production, potentially by 228,000 tons this year, as miners curtail operations in the face of falling prices for the metal used in electric vehicle batteries. Mali is seeking to develop its significant lithium reserves at a time when its military-led government is asserting more control over the mining sector in an effort to generate more revenue. The US dollar fell against a range of currencies on Monday, slipping to a 10-day low versus the safe haven yen as markets digested a surprise downgrade of the US's U.S. government's credit rating while trade tensions also brought the mood down. Moody's cut the United States' top sovereign credit rating by 1 notch on Friday, the last of the major rating agencies to downgrade the country, citing concerns about its growing $36 trillion debt pile. Now, taking a look at our indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,602 naira 15. In Botswana, 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 51. And in Zambia, it's at 26 kwacha 91. Taking a look at the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 65. Russia is 80 rubles 33. In India, it's at 85 rupees 42. China, 7 yuan 21. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 5 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Taking a look at the commodities this morning, gold is trading up $3,210 and platinum at $998 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $65.47 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Bontle Hedbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
46 minutes past 6 Central African Time. Let's continue with our coverage of what's making headlines on the continent. Going to Tanzania now, where the main opposition leader there, Tundu Lissu, appeared in court yesterday. He faces treason charges. Government accused him of spreading false information and trying to destabilize the country. Lissu's Chadema party has been disqualified from presidential and legislative elections due in October after demanding electoral reforms. We're joined on the line by Counsel Jebra Kambole. He is one of the leading counsels representing Tundu Lissu. Very welcome to you, Jebra, and thank you for making time.
Thank you so much.
So, Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu appearing in court in person yesterday, where there was a heavy police presence, if we may add. He has previously appeared virtually for these court sessions. Why do you think he made this decision this time to appear in person?
Firstly, the last time he appeared virtual, it was not his own choice, because it was just an order from the court that he should appear virtual, and he has been protesting appear virtual, demanding to his physical appearance. And after a long court battle, it was the court's order, and after defense counsel making some of the submission, the court decided that it should turn from physical appearance. So, and also because he was in hunger strike, demanding for physical appearance, that's where the court decided to make an order that he should appear physical. So, appearing physical yesterday was among of the progress for us, defense counsel.
Do we know the reason for the court requesting that he conduct his hearings virtually?
Even the defense counsel, we were not given notice, we were not given right to be heard, we were just given links so that we join virtual. So upon the protest, that's why we are demanding the reason for virtual. None of the prosecution counsel make a statement in court or the court itself. It is just the politicians, it is Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Attorney General when he addressed the Member of Parliament. That's where they disclose that because of the security reasons. But those security reasons were not disclosed in court. So up to now, we can confidently say that there was no reason to conduct this matter virtual.
So that would explain the heavy police presence then, because they wanted security to be beefed up, as they say. But him appearing in person, you say that he has been on a hunger strike. What kind of message do you think this sends to his supporters that he would appear in person instead of virtually as before?
appearing physical in this matter was a positive to the Defense Council, as explained previous. But also his appearance physical shows support and solidarity, because a number of people tried to show up yesterday in court. Very few of people were allowed to access the court, despite of the court order that the court should be open for every person to attend the court session. But unfortunately, a very few number of people were allowed to enter and see proceeding of this matter. But many people were not allowed to enter because of the so-called that the courtrooms could not accommodate the supporters.
And on that point, we understand that Kenyan rights activists were those denied entry. Also, former Justice Minister Martha Karua claims to have been denied entry into Tanzania as they traveled to attend the trial. So you're saying that is the case even in Martha Karua's case?
Yeah, what you can say is the previous orders of the court was clearly that open for every person to appear in court. So denying entry to former Minister of Justice Martha Karua and the other councils who were supposed to appear as the international trial observers of this matter. Not only Martha Karua, but also the former CJ of Kenya, Dr. Willy Mutunga was also denied to enter in Tanzania, and the other councils from Uganda. So we see that it does not send a good message to Tanzania, especially when these members of the East African community want to enter in Tanzania. So even the reason for denial has not been disclosed by any government authority.
Do you think it could do with the fact that there are lawyers?
No, because after the court session we could hear the president say that she will not allow the activists from outside the country to enter in Tanzania because she believes that they will disturb the peace of the country. But we can say that it's not the reason of only lawyers, because who are denied to enter in Tanzania, not only lawyers, but also other activists. Some people were also being arrested, the Kenyans activists, including Boni Mwangi, and another lawyer from Uganda. So not because of their lawyers, but because they are foreigners.
Let's go back to Martha Karua, because I mean she's making headlines in terms of being one of the supporters of Lissu, who was denied entry into the court or even Tanzania. She's called this move of her expulsion a total erosion of democratic principles. Can we expect a free trial for Lissu if there are all these blockages to his support? I mean, his party, the Chadema party, has been disqualified as well from the upcoming October elections.
It's very challenging to expect a fair trial in this circumstance. It's very challenging. It's very challenging on the sense that even the physical appearance was the battle struggle, which is the constitutional right. So you can see. Also, when you want to block the international observers, the people who come to observe the trial, to see whether there is fairness, to see whether there is a fair trial, to see whether Tundu Lissu will be given proper right to be heard. We see some challenge in conducting this matter. So, as the Defense Council, we condemn all these things, and we think that it's not fair to deny trial observers to see the proceeding in court. But take into account that the court made it very clear that these proceedings will be in open court, and the public are allowed to attend this matter. So, why denying other people's right to appear to see the proceedings? And especially with no valid reason or open reason. So we don't know the reason why.
Right. Thank you so much. Let's leave it there, and we really appreciate your time, and do enjoy the rest of your day if you can. I mean, there's quite a lot, obviously, that is posing challenges to your support of Tundu Lissu.
Thank you so much, and say hi to all South Africans. We love them.
We appreciate your time. The love comes back to you. Counsel Jebra Kambole is one of the leading counsels representing Tundu Lissu, talking to us via telephone. Let's also discuss with Ndonde Totinan, who is the Secretary of Chadima in the Northern Region, and that Northern Region includes the regions of Arusha, Kilimanjaro, Manyara, and Tanga, just to get the other side of the story. Thank you for joining us, Ndonde. How are you?
I'm fine. How about South Africa?
We're good, thank you, and we appreciate you making time to discuss this. Your party leader, Mr. Lissu, appeared in court yesterday. According to you, how did it go? I don't know if you heard our chat before with Counsel Jebra Kambole. He made sure that he appears physically this time because he's also been under a hunger strike, and maybe there's a message that he wanted to send in terms of how he looks. According to you, how did it go?
Yeah, I think that is the situation is very hard, and we try to pressurize, and we see that is because although the matter of the legal, but the way it is practiced, the way the government takes these issues, it is too much political, because as we hear that at the first time they say that also they have evidence. But once they appear to the court, they say that they are still investigating the case. So what we think or what we see, it is too much. It is just a political, and they think that once they detain our chairperson, so we come back, or the struggle will going to fail. But this is not about the issue of the issue. This is the movement for the democracy and for the true changes what we fight for. So the government, they should think that this is not about the personal issues. This is the movement. We fight for our true democracy in our country. So whatever they take for Mr. Lissu or whatever anyone, we are not going back, but we are still fighting until we get the true democracy and the reforms what we need.
What do you make of the support for Chadima by some activists coming outside of the country? There were Kenyan rights activists, including former Justice Minister Martha Karua, who claimed to have been denied entry into Tanzania. So as much as they were not there or not able to travel to attend the trial, they still are offering their support by being vocal in the media. What do you make of that?
I think that is first of all, that is a shame for our country, because we have the East Africa community, we have the common issues we share. Also, we have a lot of treaties we signed. It's not an island; it is the part of the world. So they just come for to observe how we practice our law, how we practice our democracy, and how we practice, the treaties we sign in the East Africa community. So they try to threaten them and the other side, they want the other people to believe that we have the true democracy. So that is the sign that what we are fighting for, we mean that we need the true changes, because we, as a country, we are supposed to respect the East African treaty and protocol, and they have the right to come to see the observers, to see how we practice our legals, our constitutions, and our democracy. So the process of detaining them, it is a bad sign for our country and the East Africa and the world in general, because it is reflected that we have a problem on practice what we signed in the East African community. So I think that it is very important for them, because the issues of fighting for democracy is not the one-man show, or it's just for the single country, because we believe that if Tanzania we are safe. Also the Kenya, Uganda, Congo also be the safe. If we are not the safe, even our surrounding country will not be safe. So I think that is we are very sorry, but that is the bad thing what was happening to us.
And I suppose that's what we can read into his confidence and positive outlook, even as he appeared yesterday. As you say, he's not just one man by himself. He's got the support backing him. He could face the death penalty for his treason charge, yet as he addressed his supporters, he encouraged them to not worry and that Chadima's leadership will be fine. So that confidence and positive outlook speaks to that, I guess, support you talk about. Let's leave it there for now, Ndonde, and thank you again for joining us on Channel Africa.
Thank you very much, and you're welcome.
Ndonde Totinen is the secretary of Chadima in the northern region, including Arusha, Kilimanjaro, Manyara, and Tanga there in Tanzania. 7 o'clock Central African time it is. As we enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine, we say good morning to you. My name is Asanda, Beda, coming to you from our studios in Johannesburg live on this 20th of May.
Goodness.
Happy Tuesday.
It's 7 o'clock already.
Yep.
Time flies, eh? But this Tanzania story is quite a thing. And it's unfortunate that we often talk about democracy around elections and how that space sometimes feels like it's shrinking. But we'll continue to explore that story and others in the next half an hour. We go back to Tanzania. We'll be talking to members of the Law Society to get a little bit more insight there. But there are other things that we're looking at this hour.
Let's get our news first. Here's Onele Nzinzi with your details, and then Musibudi Makura will follow with sports headlines.
In its own voices, English, Kisus. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is looking forward to meeting his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House tomorrow. This is according to the presidency. Ramaphosa arrived in Washington, D.C. yesterday. He will get briefings from various ministers who are also in the U.S. to support his engagements. Details on tomorrow's meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump will become clearer later in the day. Sean Bryce Peace reports.
President Ramaphosa was expected to receive a comprehensive briefing from various ministers, including Ronald Lamola of International Relations, who was expected to arrive in the USA directly from bilateral meetings in France and the Netherlands. While there are a number of vexing issues, including the Afrikaner refugee matter, the delegation is laser-focused on moving the economic relationship forward, either within the AGOA framework or ironing out the beginnings of a fresh bilateral agreement in the context of the well-established transactional nature that the current occupant in the White House prefers. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau is expected to be central to those discussions as well.
South Africa's International Relations Department has meanwhile said the meeting will not focus on misinformation. It says misinformation has contributed to the strained relations between the two countries. The department says the misinformation includes an allegation that whites in South Africa are facing a genocide. The department spokesperson, Clayson Monyela.
We've got an embassy in Washington, D.C., as you know. They also have an embassy in Pretoria. And there's been a lot of engagement through diplomatic channels to clarify, explain, and contextualize some of these issues that have been in the public domain. So we've moved from there. This meeting is about how do we enhance further this strategic relationship between the two countries to the benefit of the people of the two nations.
The cases against Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu have been postponed until the 2nd of June. The cases are in connection with the alleged publication of false information online and another related to treason. There was heavy police presence at the court with some security personnel wearing balaclavas. Spokesperson for Chadema, Brenda Rupia, says the details surrounding the case remain sketchy.
The government actually said they have 15 witnesses against that are going to go against Tundu Lissu, and they're going to. They said they will they will bring them to court on the 2nd of June. They refused to disclose the 15 people's names. So we also had, Chadema also had eight witnesses, of which the people will be disclosed on the 2nd of June as well.
The United Nations top court has sided with Equatorial Guinea in a row with Gabon over 3 islands in potentially oil-rich waters. The 2 Central African countries have been arguing over the isles, Conga, Pania and Cocoteros, since the early 1970s. The International Court of Justice ruled that Equatorial Guinea's claim, based on the 1900s treaty dividing up French and Spanish colonial assets, should be honoured. The court dismissed Gabon's central argument that a more recent treaty, the 1974 Bata Convention, had switched the island's sovereignty in its favour. Lastly, the United Nations humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher says the first delivery of aid to Gaza in 11 weeks is a drop in the ocean. He has welcomed Israel's decision to ease its blockade of the territory, but says more supplies are urgently needed. Fletcher says 9 UN trucks were cleared for entry yesterday. Steve Dozie from the International Committee of the Red Cross has echoed Fletcher's comments.
Some aid, right, is better than no aid, which is what we've been seeing for the last 2.5 months. But let's put that into perspective, because at the height of the ceasefire a few months ago, we were getting 600 trucks of humanitarian supplies and aid into Gaza every day, and that was still insufficient.
Now, for any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Ntsinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Amajida is set to return home later on this morning after winning the Africa Cup of Nations title over the weekend, and US Open venue to undergo $800 million transformation. I'll have details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Right, like I said, this story in Tanzania is escalating, and a lot of interest has been generated. Tensions are mounting as the country's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, appeared in court yesterday facing charges of treason and publishing false information. Now, Lissu's dramatic entrance, fist raised, greeted by chants of no reforms, no elections, marked his first appearance since his controversial arrest. Now, the incident has sparked sharp criticism from human rights groups across East Africa. The Tanzanian Human Rights Defenders Coalition has called the arrest arbitrary, whilst the deportation of Kenyan activists who attempted to attend the proceedings has raised regional alarm. Meanwhile, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has issued a stern warning to international rights organizations, urging them not to interfere in Tanzania's internal affairs. Well, to help us unpack the legal, regional and political implications of these developments, we're now joined by Evans Orgada, who's an advocate, law lecturer and chair of the East Africa Law Society's Rule of Law Committee. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Peter. It's good to see you after some while.
Yes, it's been a while. Let's start with your reaction to what's unfolding in court yesterday.
Well, it was quite a surprise that persons of the stature of the Chief Justice, former Chief Justice of Kenya, Professor William Mutunga, was deported from Tanzania. Former Kenyan Justice Minister Martha Karua was deported from Tanzania, amongst other lawyers and activists who had gone to that East African country to stand in solidarity with the opposition leader Tundu Lissu. it was something that was surprising for the reason that these high-ranking Kenyan citizens would have been treated so shabbily and treated in that manner, contrary to the East African Treaty and certainly contrary to basic courtesies.
So the Tanzanian Human Rights Defenders Coalition has called the arrest arbitrary. Is there a basis for making this allegation?
Well, I believe they have their reasons. From what we know, the arrests started with Mr. Tundu Lissu, who is also a lawyer. Mr. Lissu was arrested and his party proscribed or banned a few weeks ago. That stemmed from the fact that Mr. Lissu had called for sufficient reforms and had said or indicated that they were not ready to participate in elections without reform. So no elections, no reform. And that appeared to have riled the Tanzanian authorities, leading to his arrest and that of several officials from his party. And the aftermath is what we've been seeing happening in recent days.
The charges that he's facing, do they stack up in terms of what he's accused of doing?
Well, speaking as a lawyer and in my own personal opinion, I was really taken aback by the gravity of those charges, because he was charged with treason at the onset. And when you look at what he is alleged to have been said, juxtaposing that to the charge of treason, it is really something that does not add up. Even with a local law, that appears to have been a little bit an overkill. So it must also be remembered that Tanzania is a member of the East African Community Treaty, which pegs human rights, rule of law as part of the principal provisions that they have to oblige with under Article 6 and Article 7 of the treaty. Those provisions alone will frown on this overkill, charging somebody for treason for simply saying no reforms, no election.
So we've seen Kenyan activists reportedly deported upon arrival in Tanzania. And does this continue to be a trend for President Samia Suluhu Hassan in violating the right to free movement under East African Community laws?
Well, for your listeners and viewers, we have Article 104 of the East African Community Treaty, which provides for free movement. Now, free movement between Kenya and Tanzania has raised concerns. Businessmen and certain citizens have raised concerns about free movement, but it is unprecedented that a number of activist lawyers are deported and denied entry in this at this level and in this manner, because what is telling about the recent incidences is that these particular Kenyan citizens were not told what they did, which raises fundamental concerns about Tanzania's commitment to observing treaty obligations. These citizens were not told what they did. Certainly, they were not. There's nothing that has been given publicly as to why they were thought to be "quote unquote" security or national security risks.
What can regional bodies do about what's playing out in Tanzania and violations of this article that you've just mentioned? I mean, what can the likes of the East African Law Society do, perhaps, in ensuring democratic accountability in cases like this?
Well, the East Africa Law Society has a council, and our president, Rama Abubakar, sent out a statement condemning what had happened in Tanzania. President Rama had also indicated that the East Africa Law Society might consider going to court. So there are several avenues that might be taken. One is going to court, challenging this arbitrary deportation and denial of the principle of free movement. We have a precedent from the East Africa Court of Justice. There's a case that was decided in favor of a Kenyan national, Mukira Muhochi versus Republic of Uganda, where the Ugandan authorities had done exactly what was done to these Kenyan citizens. And the East African Court of Justice was quite categorical that what had happened was against the treaty provisions.
Evans, great talking to you. I hope that it's not a long time in between till our next conversation.
Certainly, it's always good to appear on SCBC, and certainly this time around I'm in Cape Town, and thank you. It was good to talk to you.
Great. We might meet up there. I'll be there this afternoon. We'll catch up.
Thank you very much, sir.
Fantastic, Evans. That's Evans Ogada, advocate, law lecturer and chairperson of the East Africa Law Society's Rule of Law Committee, giving us his thoughts about the situation that's playing out in Tanzania at the moment.
Zochitika ndi madapiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu a nyumba ya malamulo mu dziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana zawo pa zinthu zosiyanasiyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo, ndipo kondani Nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu akukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mu nyumba imeneyi ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti state of national address imene a president Dr. Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mu nyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi, chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kubuka ndewu mnyumbayi. Leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Pasama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa mu sona imeneyi, akuti imene ayichotse.
Zochitika ndi madapiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
It's Channel Africa's birthday month. Celebrate Africa's voice with us. Catch us on SABC Plus, DSTV Audio Bouquet 802, and Satellite Channel PAS10. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Package.
Key aide to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says a key aide to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's prepared for the moment and looking forward to his meeting with US President Donald Trump on Wednesday. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Mangwenya spoke to reporters soon after Ramaphosa's arrival at his hotel after landing at Joint Base Andrews just outside the U.S. capital, Washington, D.C. Mangwenya indicated that while they are alive to misconceptions about South Africa, including issues around white Afrikaners, the delegation's focus would be on the economic relationship with the United States and continued engagement towards a successful G20 Leaders Summit in South Africa later this year. Here's Sharon Bryce Peace with more.
Back in the US Capitol, the last time in September 2022 when President Ramaphosa met with former President Joe Biden at the White House, a meeting the previous administration described as reaffirming the value of their long-standing partnership while underscoring South Africa's influential voice in global affairs. Fast forward more than 2.5 years later, and the dynamics have shifted palpably. Listen to Vincent Mangwenya.
Yes, the president is prepared for the moment. He's looking forward to it. He's highly enthused, and we're looking forward to a very successful meeting aimed at researching the relationship between South Africa and the United States.
While geopolitical differences are likely to be ventilated, most notably divergent approaches to the war in Gaza and its disastrous impacts, there appears to be better alignment between Pretoria and Washington on the need to end the war in Ukraine and getting the parties to the negotiating table. That said, this is a bilateral relationship that South Africa insists must be forward-looking around tariffs, trade, and future collaboration.
It's about refocusing our trade relationship. We will still like to see AGOA extended and see South Africa's continued participation in AGOA. However, if the Trump administration has decided to do away with the trade scheme, we will then be ready to table an outline of what will be a new trade relationship framework.
Analyst Professor Sean Jacobs of the International Affairs Department at the New School in New York agrees that while resetting the diplomatic relationship matters, the focus must be on trade and making a deal.
For President Trump, as I said, it's about transactional politics in the American version of capitalism. In this moment, it's very much about transactional politics and about what you can do for the U.S. When he meets with President Trump, I think it's mostly around trade. South Africa's strategic role around trade is to play that up. Of course, South Africa, the South African government and those around the South African government don't see themselves as part of a U.S. Military industrial complex or how the U.S. views Africa militarily. So that obviously that's not going to come out of it. So I think the key point is to play up on the question of trade and South Africa's strategic role in that trade.
Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya also pressed on another vexing matter that could make or break the relationship. Listen.
Bilateral relationship, Vincent, this is probably like a good final question for you. It's going to be built on the personal relationship between President Ramaphosa and President Trump. Have you done your research on who has the better or worse golf handicap?
I think we know the answer to that.
I think it's a good question.
We know the answer to that. President Trump plays more regular golf than President Ramaphosa. So I think President Trump probably has a slightly better handicap than President Ramaphosa.
It's all going to come down to those putts at the end of the day, isn't it?
Exactly.
To expand on the golfing analogy, it's the wedge in the diplomatic relationship that must be eviscerated, and once that albatross is removed, then the bilateral relationship might find itself back in the middle of the fairway, with a clear shot of the green and maybe even the flagstick. It's a process that will require some deft diplomatic skill in achieving that very fine balance between not being bullied and not scoring a double political bogey. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in Washington, D.C.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Well, let's continue with the story. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, has been hearing, is in Washington, D.C. this week for a high-level meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. And this visit is being closely watched by economists and political analysts alike. And at the center of the talks, is a proposed trade package crafted by a South African delegation that includes Trade and Industry Minister Parks Tau, International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola, and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen. And the goal, to reset and strengthen bilateral ties, particularly in areas like agriculture, energy, infrastructure, and investment. And this comes amid growing concerns over trade imbalances, global protectionism, and the future of South Africa's participation in programs like AGOA and the African Growth and Opportunity Act. Well, to unpack for us a little bit about what's at stake and what it could mean for South Africa's economic future, we're now joined by economist Mielani Mkabela. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thanks, Peter, and the listeners of SABC Africa.
So let's start with the basics. I mean, what's the strategic importance of this meeting for South Africa, and why it's so important now?
it is always good to start with the base, as you are indicating, that the United States is one of the top 4 biggest investor in South Africa. And then they've invested in automotive industry, and then we can see big companies like Ford that are at Tshwane Special Economic Zone. And then we can see as well other companies that are around the country. And you could say if a country has invested to that level, and then it employs, or it has more than 600 companies in the country in different sectors, whether it could be mining, agriculture, manufacturing, financial services, which are key sectors in the South African economy, and then covering what I have just indicated, that above 600 companies, employing a lot of people that are locally. So it is important to have an understanding or clarity of a misunderstanding that might have happened with such a president. And at the same time, to increase relationships, whether it could be looking at expanding the automotive manufacturing and its investment, and then looking as well at other metal beneficiation, because United States by itself, they are not gonna be a strategic country to manufacture in their own country, but they can partner with countries like South Africa to manufacture. And then looking at expanding agriculture and looking at poultry farming. And you will remember in 2016, South Africa and America had a very topical discussion with the chicken. So a lot of chicken franchises that are all over the world, they are led by American companies. And as a result, it is very critical to talk with the president of United States. United States is the biggest investor as well in technology in South Africa, looking at big companies like your Microsoft and Google. They are local and they are employing a lot of people as well. So it is critical to have a strategic discussion with such a president, and we clarify the things that probably might have went wrong. But the South African delegation as well is expected to apply wisdom and knowledge in negotiating or signaling with the United States.
What's the fate of AGOA in your view at this stage? I guess these talks will give us a bit more clarity afterwards.
Practically, when you look on the last term of Donald Trump, AGOA was paused. And you can as well look at his term now, that whether it will have started with the grants to poor countries or U.S. aid grants have been paused, and then looking at other benefits in relation to tariffs as well are slightly paused. So in that regard, I don't really expect much from economic point of view from the United States president because of his thinking. So it is not really that we need to have a high expectation, but what it is expected from any leader, it could be economic stability domestically, and that has to as well benefit South Africa. But as to things that will be given to South Africa and the African continent, I really does not see that as his priority because of his a type of mindset.
So, I mean, a lot of focus, and rightly so, because the head of state is on Donald Trump and his attitude towards South Africa. The South African government has been at pains to say that our relationship is with America, American citizens, American people, American companies. Could there be some truth in that? Because Donald Trump's only president for 4 years, and some of these relationships predated him and will continue after him.
Yeah, I think you are indicating a very critical point, and I can probably indicate even when you were whether it could be at Morning Life, you might have covered that when he was a president then. There are things that as experts we can indicate that a president in America can come, but it is very difficult to change America because it is a country that has a very deep institutional memory, and its structure as well, it's deep. They are highly organized in a lot of things. So in 4 years, it is very difficult that Donald Trump can come and swing America to look at another direction. It is a very short term indeed, because you can look at it as if it could be 2 years because of how big is the economy. But if it was a small economy, he could probably do a lot of things. But America is a very big economy, and it has really a strong, it is a strong economy, and it wouldn't really be changed overnight.
All right. Melanie, we're going to have to leave it there. Let's see what happens this week. And it'll be interesting conversations that we'll have in the near future. Thanks so much indeed for your thoughts today.
Thanks, and the listeners of SABC Channel Africa.
Thank you. That's Melanie Mkabela, who's an economist, giving us his take on President Ramaphosa's visit to Washington, D.C. and the White House with Donald Trump. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is looking forward to meeting his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House tomorrow. Details on tomorrow's meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump will become clearer as the day progresses. Tanzania's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, has told his supporters to have no fear. Lissu appeared in court yesterday on treason charges. This as President Samia Suluhu Hassan warned foreign rights activists against interfering in the country's politics. And the United Nations top court has sided with Equatorial Guinea in a row with Gabon over 3 islands in potentially oil-rich waters. The two Central African countries have been arguing over the isles since the early 1970s. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get a sports update. Here is Musibudi Makura with your details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning once again from the sports desk. Amajita captain Patrick Utata says it's a special moment to be the captain of the South African men's under-20 national team. This after winning the Africa Cup of Nations tournament. Utata, who has been leading the team since Mozambique, where they won the COSAFA under-20 championship last year, has surpassed past generations who fell short. The Cape Town City midfielder played a key part in the team's trajectory, having often made an impact off the bench, and also says many consider them underdogs coming into this year's tournament.
It's been a very long journey, starting from Mozambique, coming into this tournament. I think we were definitely the underdogs. People didn't believe in us, but I think that we used that as motivation to get to where we are today. I'd like to thank the technical staff, the medical team, and the players for all the efforts. They did not go unseen, and the coaches. I thank the coach personally for giving me the responsibility to lead the group.
Meanwhile, with all the attention now also switching to the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Chile in September of this year, where Amajita will compete for the very first time as African champions. The head coach of the side, Raymond Mdaga, says 80% of his team is part of this current squad.
Yeah, I think about 80% of the team will be the same. If you check into our team list, we had about only 20 players after we lost the injury, the captain because of an injury, and we also have some players that we could not get because of the league issues at home, but it was something that we were sharing and discussing with them. Therefore, going to Chile, I think there are 4 or 5 players that will be included.
Right, so the team Amajita said to arrive home later on this morning. That flight will arrive at 10:30 a.m. Central African Time at the OR Tambo International Airport. Onto the story now. Premier League champions Liverpool twice let a lead slip as Brighton Hove and Albion fought back and style to gain a victory that boosts their slim hopes of securing European football next season. So substitute Jack Hishenwold proved to be a match winner as he made an instant impact and also headed in Matt O'Reilly's cross in the 85th minute, with the goal being given following a check of the video assistant referee after it was originally ruled as offside. Now the Reds led 1-0 and then 2-1 at the half-time break before the Seagulls recovered well to move 8th on the Premier League table, 3 points above Brentford. Now the Seagulls will travel to Tottenham Hotspur this coming Sunday on the final day of the season, and the team that finishes 8th may qualify for the UEFA Conference League. However, for that to happen, Chelsea would need to beat Real Betis in the 2025 final on Wednesday, the 28th of May, and then finish 7th in the Premier League standings or 6th, as long as Newcastle United come out in 7th position. So Arne Slot's side, by the way, won the title with 4 games to spare, but have now picked only 2 points since then. They become the first side in the Premier League era to not win any of their next 3 matches in the same campaign after becoming champions. On to tennis news now. Arthur Ashe Stadium, the US Open's showcase court, is said to be expanded as part of an $800 million renovation project at Flushing Meadows, with the United States Tennis Association confirming the news on Monday. The USTA has described the proposed work at the Billie Jean King National Stadium as the largest single investment in US Open history. It also includes a plan to increase by 2,000 capacity, the capacity of the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which currently holds over just 23,000 and is the largest tennis arena in the world. The stadium is set to get a new main entrance with facilities inside for fans to be modernized. Further plans also include a new play performance center at Flushing Meadows with expanded indoors as well as outdoor warm-up areas for players. The USTA intends to fund the renovation project itself, with the work to be done in phases between the tournaments to minimize any disruption, and also hopes to get it completed by 2027. And finally, wheelchair basketball president, Africa president, that is of course Charles Saunders, unpacks just why South Africa wins most bids to host continental as well as global competition. He also reacts to the recent announcement that the first ever wheelchair basketball 3x3 Open World Championships will be hosted by the country's Northwest Province from the 1st until the 3rd of August. Let's hear from Saunders.
Well, first of all, it is the support that comes through from radio stations like Channel Africa to get the news out to everybody, and the excellent backup by the community. Without that, we would never be able to do what we do. South Africa, we know, is a sports-loving nation, and it is the destiny to come through to. We have the facilities, we have the people that can organize, and we are the people that feel that to put the step forward is to be able to allow everybody else in South Africa to do the same.
For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The president of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Beda, Dr. Sidi Ould Tah, he is vying for the presidency of the African Development Bank, the AFDB. He positions himself as a fervent defender of economic integration and structural transformation on the African continent.
So I do believe that I have a 360 view of the development challenges in the continent with my experience from both the supply side and the demand side. But more importantly, my vision is to bring on board all the stakeholders and to have a holistic approach for the development of the continent and to develop partnership across the continent and outside the continent, bringing all the stakeholders together to work for one goal is to make Africa green for life and livelihood of the African population.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get our economics update now. Here is Buntle Headbush with the business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning. The Agri-Western Cape in South Africa says commercial farmers exporting to the USA will be hard hit if the AGOA agreement is not renewed. President Cyril Ramaphosa is heading a delegation to the US to discuss, amongst others, trade and tariff agreements. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, grants preferential access to the US market for qualifying exports from South Africa, which includes citrus, fruits and wines. The US President Donald Trump's unilateral hiking of tariffs early this year unsettled local citrus and wine farmers. Agri-West Cape CEO Yanni Stradom says farmers will have to go back to the drawing board if the agreement is not rekindled.
75% of all agricultural produce exported to the United States are covered under the AGOA agreement. So it's a huge benefit for the agricultural sector. In terms of our opinion regarding the renewal of the agreement, I'm personally of the opinion that given what's going on in the global trade market around the world, I don't think it will be renewed, and we will have to have a plan B.
Meanwhile, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa aims to discuss business opportunities for Elon Musk's companies during his visit to Washington this week. President Ramaphosa's spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, says one of the points discussed could be a potential proposal for automotive company Tesla, which is led by Musk, to receive favorable tariffs on imports into South Africa in exchange for building electric vehicle charging stations. Magwenya said the issue of licensing for Musk's satellite company Starlink would also be discussed. South Africa's Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Sindisiwe Chikunga, has lauded the banking and financial sector's continued support. Kunga, who spoke at a roundtable held in Johannesburg, said the aim was to foster inclusivity by engaging corporate stakeholders. The minister said it was pivotal to also engage in G20-related discussions during and beyond South Africa's G20 presidency. She said with these efforts, more support will also be extended to women, youth, and persons with disabilities.
What I liked about the presentations was the issue of emphasizing the collaboration among themselves, to say there are resources, but maybe we may not even as finance institutions be effectively impactful on what we are doing because we work in silos. If we were to share the resources that we have and work together, we may even be more impactful.
The president of the Islamic Development Bank, Mohammed Sulaiman Al-Jasser, says Algeria is expected to receive $3 billion in loans over the next 3 years. The loans will support key development projects in that country. The funding will be directed towards projects including railway development as part of the president's plan to connect the country's economic zones. And oil prices have barely moved this morning as traders weigh the impact on supply from a possible breakdown in the US-Iran talks on Tehran's nuclear program. Other factors impacting the oil price include strong physical demand in Asia and a cautious outlook for China's macroeconomy. Brent futures dipped 6 cents to $65.48 a barrel this morning. Crude has rebounded this month after sliding almost 16% in April following an easing in the trade war between the US and China. Now for a look at our financial indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,602 naira 15. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 51, and in Zambia, it's at 26 kwacha 91. Taking a look at the BRICS countries' currencies, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 65. Russia is 80 rubles 33. India, 85 rupees 42. China, 7 yuan 21. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 5 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Looking at our commodities, gold is trading at $3,210 and platinum at $998 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $65.47 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Wontle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It's 7:45 Central African Time. South Africa's minister in the presidency, responsible for women, youth and persons with disabilities, says yesterday's roundtable sought to foster inclusivity by engaging the banking and financial sectors along with corporate stakeholders in G20-related discussions that have direct implications for South Africa during and beyond its G20 presidency. It also sought to forge and cultivate smart partnerships for unlocking inclusive economic participation opportunities. The roundtable was held in Johannesburg. Sisi Sekhalo has more on this story.
The roundtable was attended by the banking sector and various financial institutions from across the country. Minister in the presidency, Sindisiwe Chikunga, says another aim was to engage the banking sector to invest in South Africa's G20 initiatives, particularly the work of the Empowerment Working Group and the Disability Inclusion Initiative. It was also to engage the sector on how it can support women, youth and persons with disabilities.
What I liked about the presentations was the issue of emphasizing the collaboration among themselves, to say there are resources, but maybe we may not even as finance institutions be effectively impactful on what we are doing because we work in silos. And if we were to share the resources that we have and work together, we may even be more impactful. And I think that is what is important. And for them to say, Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, we have a responsibility to coordinate us. And for me, I was like, wow, to coordinate the private sector, to coordinate the banking institutions, the financial institutions. And I think that is what I'm taking home from this breakfast.
The Development Bank of Southern Africa partnered with the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities to host the roundtable. The Chief Executive Officer of the bank, Boitumelo Mosako, shares what came out of the roundtable.
One of the discussions that we were having is that as development finance institutions, because we actually had a few in the room today, and as commercial banks, we actually have to find a way of working together. For instance, as a development finance institution, one can take a little bit more risk. For example, as the DBSA, we have project preparation facilities that we can make available to get projects to bankability. This is where we can play a role where we can de-risk projects to actually enable private sector participation. Another thing that we have allocated is actually, equity support as well that we have available as a financial instrument that we can offer.
Women-led businesses and organizations are hoping that the engagements such as the roundtable will yield positive results for them. Soraya Williams is from Design 26 Foundation, an organization that provides young girls that falls within the need category with sewing and entrepreneurship skills. After completion, the organization tries to find employment opportunities for the girls. The entity is hoping to form meaningful relationships with financial institutions.
What I'm expecting from the G20 event, is to form valuable connections in order for our organization, obviously, to grow towards our goal of developing a sewing skills and incubation hub in Mitchell's Plain, and also, hold them accountable. Because like the minister said, and also the CEO of DBSA, a lot of people, we get into rooms and we talk about these things, and when we leave the room, we leave the number and we lost the email. So I'm looking for opportunities in order for me to take back home to Cape Town or so to the Cape Flats and empower young girls in my community through initiatives like this.
Minister Chikunga also called on stakeholders represented to ensure that South Africa's G20 presidency leaves a life-changing socio-economic legacy for women and persons with disabilities. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
South Africa is currently hosting a regional dialogue on biodiversity strategies for the Southern African Development Community, or SADC, and East African Community, or EAC, member states, underway from 19 to 23rd May 2025 in Cape Town, South Africa. The event, which began yesterday, is convened by the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, with support from key regional and international partners. It aims to fast-track the alignment of national biodiversity strategies and action plans, and these are called NBSAPs, with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework to halt and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. For more on this, we're joined on the line by Deputy Director General of the Biodiversity and Conservation Branch within the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment in South Africa, Flora Makhotlwa. Flora, thank you for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning to you. I'm well.
Thank you so much for making time. So what inspired, first of all, the alignment of national biodiversity strategies and action plans with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework?
So the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is what one will refer to as a footprint of what we are supposed to do as countries that have ratified the Convention on Biological Diversity in order to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity by 2030. So what inspired the development of our NBSAP, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan, is actually an implementation tool for that global biodiversity framework. And each member country is supposed to then develop a country-specific NBSAP that is then aligned to the global biodiversity framework. So this workshop we are having here in Cape Town It's a regional dialogue for East Africa member states and Southern African member states. It is convened and facilitated by the Secretariat to the Convention, together with a number of partners, specifically the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Southern African Office, that has facilitated and brought us together here to accelerate the implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework.
So the implementation is the main objective, but what are some of the aims of this regional dialogue as it connects to the goals of this alignment of plans?
At the last meeting of the Conference of Parties, COP16 rather, we submitted what are called national targets. So the Global Biodiversity Framework itself has got 23 targets, and countries were requested to then submit targets that are aligned with the Global Biodiversity Framework, taking into account their own national circumstances. So then they have then further requested parties to further develop this NB sub. So the objective here is for countries to accelerate the finalization of their revised biodiversity strategy and action plan. In South Africa, our first iteration was running from 2015 to 2025. We are currently finalizing the review, which will be the next iteration from 2025 to 2035. So the objective is really to accelerate and really to get countries to show their commitment to implementing the GBF itself.
How is South Africa's, or through the department, contributing to the alignment of biodiversity strategies and action plans while also trying to keep up with global biodiversity frameworks with the time frame of 2030 at the back of our minds?
South Africa is one of the 17 mega diverse countries, which means that we've got biodiversity that occurs here in South Africa and nowhere else. We do have quite a number of plant and animal species and unique ecosystems that renders us to be in the league of nations that are called the large mega diverse countries. In that context, therefore, we have to safeguard our biodiversity as a country to ensure that we prevent loss. Preventing loss can include measures such as removing alien invasive plant, ensuring that we expand our protected area on conservation estate, also protecting and conserving our animals and using our natural resources in a sustainable manner, whilst at the same time ensuring that there is access and benefits are shared with the broad South African population. And therefore, our contribution in this regard is to ensure that we continue to halt and reverse the loss of such biodiversity, but also at the same time take into account our national circumstances in terms of our need to ensure that biodiversity continues to contribute significantly to the gross domestic product of the country also. So that will be our contribution. However, we will not be able to achieve a high-level ambition in the absence of support of financial resources from countries that can then support us to do so.
Let's talk about the role of technical and scientific cooperation. As you mentioned, that some of our common biodiversity challenges faced in the country are habitat loss, things like the degradation of our land or fields and pollution. What role does technical and scientific cooperation play in making sure that these are reversed or not as badly impacting our biodiverse spaces?
The South African National Biodiversity Institute, which is an entity of the department, is our premier scientific institution that provides us with the scientific evidence base that gives us data and information in respect of the state of biodiversity. It has now been selected as one of the 18 regional technical scientific support centers globally, and it will be supporting about 8 countries, I think, in supporting them to complete their national biodiversity strategy and action plans, and also to ensure that they submit the NB subs by end of this year, and also assist them in developing what are called national reports. So national reports essentially provides information on how as a country we are managing our biodiversity. So they are not only going to support South Africa, they will be supporting the other countries. So SANBI stands at a very unique position in the sense that they do have the scientific basis to be able to provide us with the information that tells us about the state of biodiversity on the one hand, but at the same time also assist us to develop our strategy and action plans that is based on the science. But further to that, they also do biodiversity spatial planning in terms of starting to map where are our biodiversity hotspots in terms of the biodiversity richness, or otherwise where the state of biodiversity may be declining, so that we then can develop interventions to be able to restore, to rehabilitate areas where biodiversity may be affected negatively.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for now, and let's allow you to go back into those dialogues there in Cape Town. And thanks again for your time, Flora.
Thank you very much, Asanda.
Flora Mokhotlwa is Deputy Director General of the Biodiversity and Conservation Branch within the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, talking to us about hosting currently happening. It's a regional dialogue on biodiversity strategies that's in Cape Town here in South Africa, targeting the areas of Southern African Development Community or SADC and the East African Community or EAC member states. As we enter the next and final hour, the third one of Africa Rise and Shine, we say good morning to you from our Johannesburg studios. I'm Asanda, Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Yes, thanks so much indeed for tuning in. This is Rise and Shine, of course, where we bring you the African perspective, giving you the very best wake-up call in terms of news and current affairs from across the continent. And thanks for tuning in on www.channelafrica.co.za, and you can also catch us on our app on your mobile phone. Just go into your app store and look for SABC Plus. That's SABC Plus. Look for Channel Africa, and you can take us wherever you travel, and you continue to listen. So we've got quite a lot coming up in the next half an hour, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. But first, it's time to catch up with the news.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is looking forward to meeting his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House tomorrow. This is according to the presidency. Ramaphosa arrived in Washington, D.C. yesterday. He will get briefings from various ministers who are also in the U.S. to support his engagements. Details on tomorrow's meeting between Ramaphosa and Trump will become clearer as the day progresses. Sharon Bryce Peace reports.
President Ramaphosa was expected to receive a comprehensive briefing from various ministers, including Ronald Lamola of International Relations, who was expected to arrive in the USA directly from bilateral meetings in France and the Netherlands. While there are a number of vexing issues, including the Afrikaner refugee matter, the delegation is laser-focused on moving the economic relationship forward, either within the AGOA framework or ironing out the beginnings of a fresh bilateral agreement in the context of the well-established transactional nature that the current occupant in the White House prefers. Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Parks Tau is expected to be central to those discussions as well.
South Africa's International Relations Department has meanwhile said the meeting will not focus on misinformation. It says misinformation is what contributed to the strained relations between the two countries. The department says the misinformation includes an allegation that whites in South Africa are facing a genocide. The department spokesperson, Clayson Munyela.
We've got an embassy in Washington, D.C., as you know. They also have an embassy in Pretoria. And there's been a lot of engagement through diplomatic channels to clarify, explain, and contextualize some of these issues that have been in the public domain. So we've moved from there. This meeting is about how do we enhance further this strategic relationship between the two countries to the benefit of the people of the two nations.
Tanzania's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, has told his supporters to have no fear. Lissu appeared in court yesterday on treason charges. The cases have been postponed until the 2nd of June. President Samia Suluhu Hassan has meanwhile warned foreign rights activists against interfering in the country's politics. The chairperson of the East Africa Law Society Rule of Law Committee elaborates on the matter. Evans Ogada is his name.
What he is alleged to have been said, juxtaposing that to the charge of treason, it is really something that does not add up. Even with local law, that appears to have been a little bit an overkill. So it must also be remembered that Tanzania is a member of the East African Community Treaty, which pegs human rights, rule of law as part of the principal provisions that they have to oblige with under Article 6 and Article 7 of the treaty. Those provisions alone will frown on this overkill, charging somebody for treason for simply saying no reforms, no election.
The United Nations top court has sided with Equatorial Guinea in a row with Gabon over 3 islands in potentially oil-rich waters. The 2 Central African countries have been arguing over the isles Conga, Mbanier and Cocoteros since the early 1970s. The International Court of Justice ruled that Equatorial Guinea's claim, based on the 1900s treaty dividing up French and Spanish colonial assets, should be honored. The court dismissed Gabon's central argument that a more recent treaty in 1974's Bata Convention had switched the island's sovereignty in its favor. Lastly, the first group of migrants who agreed to the Trump administration's self-deportation program have been flown to Honduras and Colombia. Each of the 64 people had accepted a payment of $1,000 to leave the U.S. The Department's Homeland Security says they avoided arrest and fines by joining the voluntary program. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, CAF as well as the European Union have a multi-million partnership to discover more gems in African schools. And Amajita head coach Raymond Mdaka is already looking ahead to the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. Details coming up at 8:30.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
If you've just joined us, well, you catch the last hour of Africa Rise and Shine on this Tuesday. Good morning to you. 6 minutes past 8 is our time, Central African. Education and artificial intelligence. Now we look at this story. The rapid rise of AI, or artificial intelligence, has sparked a debate on how technology can be used to boost education. Questions such as, how could AI help fast-track learning? Is AI taking over teaching? And then also concerns on how AI is being used to manipulate research and schoolwork. We hear these coming up. This morning we look at how artificial intelligence has influenced the revolution of education. And we're joined on the line to discuss this by Professor Chilidzi Marwala, who is Rector of the United Nations University. Professor, thank you for making time for us. How are you on this Tuesday?
Well, thank you very much. Greetings from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. I am excited to be joining you and your audience.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us. Let's start, first of all, maybe by differentiating whether we need to upskill or reskill when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence. If we look at the major points that we need to take note of for our education systems.
I think you need to do both. You need to reskill, you need to upskill, and you need to transform our education system so that it is able to deal with the issues that we face today.
In what ways then are we seeing AI, the revolution, pan out on the African continent in terms of how knowledge is created and spread?
Let me start with on the democratization of knowledge. And I come from South Africa in Limpopo province, and when I was growing up, there was no source of information to explain to me what things are. And of course, now if you have access to the internet, if you have a smartphone, you can be able to get into ChatGPT and other applications and be able to access knowledge that otherwise you would not be able to get. Now, you are asking specifically on knowledge production. Knowledge production is a high-level form of education where you go and dig for new information. And of course, traditionally, you go to the libraries, the archives, and unearth this. With artificial intelligence, access to information becomes shorter, which basically means you can be able to complete the subject quicker. But I have to also add that when you use artificial intelligence, you also have to be careful because it is not a perfect technology. In fact, it is not a precise technology. If I always give this example that if an AI system gives you 100%, in AI research, we normally say that it is overtrained, it is memorizing and not learning, and it will not be able to tell you information that requires it to think. So bearing that in mind, we always have to have guidelines to ensure that as we use this technology in our education system, we use it well. And then there is another technical phenomenon called the maximum likelihood approach. I don't want to bore you with the theory of artificial intelligence. What it basically says, it says that it identifies issues that are highly represented in the data set. What this means, it means that by design, it marginalizes things that are not highly digitized, and when you come to the African continent, it excludes us. You know, if you ask it about quite an important event that happened in my village 100 years ago, it probably would not be able to tell you because it is not highly represented in the digital space. And as we continue to generate knowledge, you should bear in mind that this is not a technology that is here to replace us, it's a technology that is here to augment us. Human wisdom must always be in the loop.
Talking about augmentation then, in what opportunities can we derive from AI when it comes to the augmentation or the transformation of our education sector? You mentioned courses can be finished earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we come to our education sector, there are a number of issues that we are absolutely grappling with. I think there is the issue of the quality of teaching. How do we incorporate digital technology in general and artificial intelligence in particular into our classrooms so that we can be able to augment our capacity to teach? Secondly, I always say that education, if there is one thing that you should come out of an educational system, is the ability to think, to think, and also to ask questions. Can artificial intelligence help us to do that? How do we change our curriculum to ensure that we augment people to be able to use it responsibly? It is clear that the education system that is based on memorization is now outdated. Access to information is democratized. Now education must actually concentrate on helping people to be creative, to think, to be able to come up with issues and solutions that I want to use that term, out of the box. The problem is that everybody is using these technologies, which basically means the consequences of that is that solutions that you tend to get are similar. So the education system must skill a person amidst the convergence of solutions, somebody to be able to differentiate themselves and come up with something that AI is not able to come up with.
And on that point, I mean, in terms of what AI is not able to come up with, in cases where there is an adequate understanding and on the part of teachers in terms of how to implement the use of AI, how do we ensure that the knowledge we are getting is not generic to the Western world or the European world, and we can still have our traditional African essence in it?
Well, I think we need to participate in AI development. I think we need to, AI is really about data. And if the African data set is not included in the digital universe, then it is going to be excluded. And there are interesting work that is happening. Just recently I was talking to Professor Vukosi Maribate from University of Pretoria, where he is thinking about digitizing the archives, including the SABC archives, so that we can be able to insert AI and ensure that the AI systems understands us, ultimately guaranteeing that we are not excluded from this technology. So the digitization project is very important. So the project Masakane that Professor Vukosi has initiated of digitizing African information, especially the information that is not even written in English, is absolutely quite critical. The second aspect is really about computing and algorithms. Are these algorithms designed to be able to understand our languages and so on and so forth? I always give an example of the work that we did about 15 years ago of an automated Easy Closer to English translation, and we realized that because of the infrequent occurrence of clicks in Easy Closer, it's actually only 5%. It does not know how to learn them. The clicks, ultimately excluding an important language. So how do we redesign algorithms so that they can be able to understand the particularities of our language, of our culture, and not exclude us? And the third aspect is the use of this technology. We need to use it for the good. We need to use it to maximize the good and avoid the bad. Unfortunately, it comes with all sorts of bad things. For example, its utilization of water and energy is less than ideal. For example, it's still algorithmic discrimination. Some of it can be avoided, but unavoidable algorithmic discrimination is a reality that we have to live with. The issue of ensuring that it is not weaponized, but it is used in education so that people can be able to learn. But ultimately, it means we need to retrain teachers. I will take an example of a course that was introduced when I was still Vice Chancellor of University of Johannesburg, an AI literacy course for all graduates. I think illiteracy is no longer the inability to read and write. Illiteracy is the inability to use technology in general and AI in particular. And we need to make sure that we develop courses, and they have to be developed at the earliest of levels. We shouldn't just write textbooks for people who are doing PhDs. I've written about 20 books, and most of them are for graduates. And at one stage I said, maybe I should write a book for kids. And it requires another form of education that many of us do not have. How do we ensure that our university systems prepare for the people who are going to lead the AI digital literacy revolution in the African continent?
17 minutes past 8 Central African time. If you've just joined us here on Africa Rise and Shine, we continue our chat with Rector of the United Nations University, Professor Tshilidzi Marwala, talking about the rapid rise of AI and how this technology can be used to boost education. You mentioned your home country, South Africa, as an example of how you were exposed or not exposed adequately to technology at the time. But is there a leader when it comes to this AI revolution on the continent in terms of a country that we could say we could use as a template?
Well, I mean, I think there are absolutely excellent work that is happening across the continent. You go to the Kenya AI ecosystem, it is impressive. You go to the Rwanda AI ecosystem, it is absolutely impressive. You go to Nigeria, and the work that is being done there in the Arab states. Now, let's come to our own country, which is obviously the most industrialized. Much of the AI research that happens in the African continent actually happens here. Quite a great deal of initiatives have emerged from this continent, from South Africa. Deep Learning Ndoro, founded by Vukosi and Shakil, that continues to educate the African people as to how they can be able to insert themselves into AI research and development with a view of commercializing AI. Now, where lies the issues? I think the issues is not really technology, because most of these AI algorithms are already available for free, whether it is TensorFlow in an Android application and so on and so forth. The issue is how do we skill people to be able to insert themselves into the commercial ecosystem? Secondly, how do we finance that? Great ideas never find expression for no other reason except the fact that they are not funders. And this obviously requires our political economy to be much more risk-seeking. You go to Silicon Valley, you can see how people can take risk on something. We're not talking about reckless investment, but I think there is a need for investment that must be done. I think we need to go back in South Africa to the 8 recommendations that we made in the Presidential Commission on the 4th Industrial Revolution, and the first one was education, educating people on AI, certainly the AI Institute, but most importantly, the infrastructure. How do we create the infrastructure so that our people can be able to thrive? What are the AI infrastructure? Computing infrastructure. High-performance computing, domestic high-performance computing does not really exist in the African continent. Much of it is South Africa. The high-performance computing at the CSIR is probably one of the most complex that has been developed in the African continent, but it needs to move into GPUs, high-performance computer chips, so that we can be able to broaden access to AI and commercialize it.
How do we ensure the ethical use of AI, given that it is moving at a rapid speed, and that's an inevitable part of it, that there will be challenges, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of how we adopt it? Even ChatGPT, for example, as an AI tool, it seems to be feared by many. I've seen examples of even famous actors being made to be looking like they were making a certain speech or saying something that they actually did not say, and it's not their real video. But somehow the lips can be manipulated. Somebody looks like they're saying something that someone else wants them to say. The ethical use of AI, how will we ensure that?
Well, I think there are a number of levels we need to do. The first one, we need to remind ourselves of the values. It must be accurate, it must be secure, it must not be weaponized. And secondly, we need to change human behavior. How do we change human behavior so that they use it ethically? The best way of changing human behavior is through education. Thirdly, we need to create incentive mechanisms. How do we incentivize people to do good and disincentivize people to do bad? And thirdly, we need policies and regulations. Very important. And fourthly, we need standards. What are the standards of the use of this technology? And fifthly, we need laws. There is an AI Act in Europe. South Africa must follow suit. It needs to go, our parliamentarians must start now working on an AI legislation so that we can be able to ensure that AI is used to maximize the good and to minimize the bad that comes out of this technology.
On the other hand, what are some of the myths that we need to dispel around the use of AI so that we allay these fears?
Well, I think the biggest myth is to think that AI is a high precision technology. It is not. It is not a high precision technology. It's actually a statistical technology. Secondly, we need to understand that it works best if it is operating on subjects that have concentrated sources of information. For example, if I'm asking about an individual who is on Wikipedia, has a Wikipedia profile, it is much, much easier, perhaps even more accurate than if I'm asking about somebody it does not know. I give an example when I was asking it about my grandmother, and it was saying my grandmother was my wife. And the reason for that is because in the digital database, and if AI continues to use the maximum likelihood approach, which it will, the relations are much more between a husband and a wife compared to a grandson and a grandmother. So those are some of the issues that we need to be aware of, so that when we use it responsibly, and we train people to be able to use it responsibly.
To ensure then the adequate understanding of AI, the reskilling and upskilling and the combination of that we need to implement for our teachers in terms of knowledge dispersal within the education sector, do we have capacity for training on the continent with that?
Nobody has capacity for training. We need to build it. It has to start with the curriculum, and some of it will have to be contextualized. It will have to be contextualized so that the people who are learning can be able to understand. Some of it will have to be contextualized so that it is written in our language. Some of the terminologies actually do not exist. We might have to make some of what is a multi-layer perceptron in Isisu, for example. Very important. But we also need to create the necessary infrastructure to be able to explore this technology. So it is an ongoing issue, and Africa is not an exception. Maybe it might be lagging a little bit behind, but everywhere we need to relook at our educational system, we need to retrain, and we need to ensure that people become ready for the AI-driven world.
How, Professor, in cases where internet access through laptops or computers is not possible on our African schools or in our African schools, how effective would it be to allow for mobile connectivity, mobile internet connectivity within schools? And would that not pose challenges in terms of content control?
No, absolutely not. Mobile technology is only going to improve. 5G is here, and South Africa has an impressive 5G technology. 6G is coming, so it is quite important that we understand that there's going to be a convergence of mobile and computers, and we can do quite a lot of things using mobile technology that otherwise would have required you to have access to big computers.
Finally, where do you see us going with AI and education? Do you think we need to start this implementing or teaching it at early childhood level or in the later stages of one's education, high school and the university institutions?
I think it should be across the board. We should teach it at the earliest levels, and we should also teach it at the university level. But it shouldn't end there. We need to retrain people who got out of the educational system without AI. How do we retrain people who did not have anything to learn? And it might not necessarily be a degree, it might be a generalized literacy course that just gives the ABC of AI.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time, Professor. We leave it there for today, appreciating your insights on this very important topic.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Professor Chilidzi Marwala, Rector of the United Nations University, talking to us about the rapid rise of AI and how this technology is basically going to be used to boost education. How we access knowledge and information is definitely already changed. So that will continue on that trajectory, and we just need to prepare ourselves and dispel the myths around it and not be so fearful with education and all the points that Professor has shared with us. The other day I was watching a movie, crazy to watch and see, but obviously this is not happening now, but you can see how possible it could be, where politicians were being forced to read into a screen, being recorded, and then their words altered to advance the agenda of a terrorist group. I think you might have seen it. I don't want to advertise it by giving out its name, but that's something that's possible, where we can go and people are speaking in the camera or in a video, and you think it's actually the person and what they said, but they've manipulated the image as well as their lip movements to say something that they didn't actually say. So that's that issue or chat on AI. Coming up, we're going to have our news headlines on Africa Rise and Shine.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
South Africa's spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says President Cyril Ramaphosa is highly enthused, prepared for this moment, and looking forward to meeting U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House tomorrow. Tanzania's main opposition leader, Tundu Lissu, has told his supporters to have no fear. Lissu appeared in court yesterday on treason charges. This says President Samia Suluhu Hassan has warned foreign rights activists against interfering in the country's politics. And the U.S. Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to now end the deportation protection for nearly 350,000 Venezuelan immigrants. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's find out what's been happening in the world of sport as we say good morning once again to Rachel Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. We'll start here. So the second term of CAF President Patrice Motsepe continues to rack in financial backing for African football after the launch of a partnership with the European Union in Cairo, Egypt over the weekend. So the 2-year deal, estimated worth over $22 million was announced at a function held at a AMEU residency in Cairo, and will now see the two entities partnering for the Africa Cup of Nations, the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, as well as the CAF Schools Championships. Now, European Commissioner for International Partners, Josef Sekela, says the aim now is to see over 33,000 schools in Africa benefiting from this partnership.
We don't talk about the contribution because, this is among the business partners basically to keep certain volumes and data confidential. However, what I was already mentioning, so our aim is to extend this very great idea where already 1 million young African girls and boys have been participating, and this is the CAF School Football Championship. And our plan, with our contribution, is to extend the number of the schools up to 33,000.
Now, the European Union is no stranger to partnerships in Africa, having been the continent's first trading partner as well as investor, including the Global Gateway as well as Africa-Europe plan worth more than 150 billion euros. Now, Sigela reveals the second part of this partnership for schools is designed to promote the well-being of the kids.
The second part of the program is to support and to protect, really to protect the young players, basically in the transformation period, where basically they are thinking about, for example, going abroad and to play in the foreign ligas. So simply to give them the right support, including the legal support, in order to make such a transfer basically mainly beneficial for them.
Amajita captain Patrick Utata says it's a special moment to be the captain of the South African men's under-20 national team after winning the Africa Cup of Nations tournament. Utata, who has been leading the team since Zimbabwe, where they won the COSAFA under-20 championship last year, has surpassed past generations who fell short. Now, the Cape Town City midfielder played a key part in the team's trajectory, having also often made an impact off the bench, and says many consider them underdogs coming into this year's tournament.
It's been a very long journey, starting from Mozambique, coming into this tournament. I think we were definitely the underdogs. People didn't believe in us, but I think that we used that as motivation to get to where we are today. I'd like to thank the technical staff, the medical team, and the players for all the efforts. They did not go unseen, and the coaches. I thank the coach personally for giving me the responsibility to lead the group.
Meanwhile, with all the attention now switching to the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in Chile in September this year, where Amajita will compete for the first time as the African champions, the head coach Raymond Mdaga says 80% of his team is part of this current squad.
Yeah, I think about 80% of the team will be the same. If you check into our team list, we had about only 20 players after we lost the injury, the captain because of an injury, and we also have some players that we could not get because of the league issues at home. But it was something that we were sharing and discussing with them. Therefore, going to Chile, I think there are 4 or 5 players that will be included.
And finally, Arthur Ashe Stadium, the US Open showcase court is said to be expanded as part of an $800 million renovation project at Flushing Meadows. Now, the United States Tennis Association has described the proposed work at the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center as the largest single investment in US Open history. It includes a plan to increase by about 2,000 the capacity of the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which currently holds over just 24,000 and is the largest tennis arena in the world. The stadium is set to get also a new main entrance with facilities inside for fans to be modernized. Further plans also include a new player performance center at Flushing Meadows with expanded indoor as well as outdoor warm-up areas for the players. The USTA also intends to fund the renovation project itself, with work to be done in phases between tournaments to minimize disruption, and also hopes to get it completed by 2027. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Oh, time for our economics update now. Bontle Headbush has our details. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Good morning. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa aims to discuss business opportunities for Elon Musk's companies during his visit to Washington this week. President Ramaphosa spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says one of the points discussed could be a potential proposal for automotive company Tesla, which is led by Musk, to receive favorable tariffs on its imports into South Africa in exchange for building electric vehicles charging stations. Magwenya said the issue of licensing for Musk's satellite company Starlink would also be discussed. Party leader for the Economic Freedom Fighters in South Africa, Julius Malema, has expressed pessimism on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's ability to table a budget that can provide solutions to the country's high unemployment rate. Godongwana will table the 2025 budget tomorrow. This as South Africa's unemployment rate surges to 32.9%. According to Stats SA, 291,000 people lost jobs in the first quarter of this year, deepening the crisis. The labour force contracted despite a growing work-age population, leaving 25.1 million South Africans competing for limited jobs. Malema was speaking yesterday when the EFF marched to the offices of the National Treasury in Pretoria.
On Wednesday, we are going to listen to another line. There will not be a plan to create jobs. There will not be a plan to grow the economy. There won't be money to give to Transnet. There won't be money to give to state-owned enterprises. They want to privatize them so that we can be unemployed.
Moving further afield, China and Hong Kong stocks have risen today, led by healthcare and consumer shares, as market sentiment improved after China cut key lending rates for the first time since October. China's blue chip CSI 300 index was up 0.6%, while the Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.4%. Hong Kong's benchmark Hang Seng Index jumped 1.3%, hovering near a 2-month high. China cut benchmark lending rates for the first time in 7 months today, while major state banks lowered deposit rates as authorities work to ease monetary policy to help buffer the economy from the impact of the Sino-US trade war. Oil prices have barely moved this morning as traders weigh the impact on supply from a possible breakdown in the Iran-US talks on Tehran's nuclear program. Other factors impacting the oil price include strong physical demand in Asia and a cautious outlook for China's macroeconomy. Brent futures dipped 6 cents to $65.48 a barrel. Crude has rebounded this month after sliding almost 16% in April following an easing in the trade war between the US and China. Taking a look at our financial indicators this morning, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,602 naira 15. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 39. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 51. And in Zambia, it's at 26 kwacha 91. Moving on to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 reals 65. Russia is 80 rubles 33. India, 85 rupees 42. China, 7 yuan 21. And South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 5 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Looking at the commodities, gold is trading at $3,210 and platinum at $998 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $65.47 a barrel this morning. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Buntle Hedbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, as South Africa prepares to mark National Child Protection Week starting next week, the spotlight is turning to the critical but often overlooked role of early childhood development, ECD centres. Far from being a mere drop-off points for working parents, ECD centres are a child's first structured encounter with care, learning, as well as protection. Dr. Zelniak, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Santa Shoebox Project, says that ECD practitioners are not babysitters. They're trained professionals entrusted with safeguarding children's rights to survive, thrive, and reach their full potential. Well, to unpack these centres and their staff and the role that they play in upholding children's rights and well-being, we're now joined on the line by Deb Zelesniak. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Peter. I know my surname's a mouthful. You did get it right.
Eventually.
Thanks for having me. You did.
So let's start with what exactly is the role of early childhood development centres in the broader child protection system?
Look, ideally, you're spot on. It isn't simply a centre where parents drop their children off hoping that it's the best solution for safety, because that is really the bottom line. You know, when parents are at work, they need somewhere safe to leave their child. But children between the ages of 0 and 5 have this incredible sponge of a brain, an unrepeated rate of brain development. And if we don't tap into it in those early years, we are missing out on an incredibly valuable opportunity, not just in the education sector, but also for the economy of our country, of course, rolling forward a couple of decades. But with 1.3 million children not even having the opportunity to attend an ECD centre, we're looking at a crisis which is adequately now at last being addressed by the Department of Basic Education, with a long road ahead, but it is being looked at. And from an educational aspect, there are massive opportunities for upskilling, training ECD practitioners in the all-important psychosocial skills, cognitive development, all looked at and covered very broadly by perceptual skills training, which is made available. There are barriers to entry. It is being rolled out. We've got a national curriculum framework, one of the excellent tools available to ECD practitioners, all looking at this adequate development of a child in their formative years.
What you're saying is that these ECD practitioners, if we use that word, actually need to be highly trained given the different layers. It's not just playing with children. There's a whole psychology behind that and other elements?
There is indeed. And sadly, the correct training has not been easily available. The intention has always been completely sacrosanct. I mean, these are women, largely women, of course, working in a thankless sector for very little money with very little resource allocated to it. It's, of course, just been increased from 17 Rand a day per child to 24 Rand a day per child, and an additional 10 billion Rand has been allocated to ECD over the next 3 years in support of the Banapele rollout of registration drive, in support of resources such as teaching aids and training, and of course infrastructure. We know even though there are 42,000 ECDs in South Africa, even that is not sufficient for this ever-growing population of ours. But yes, it's layered, and care comes into it, of course, but at which level? Do we care for a child simply on a matter of personal safety? Do we care for them on a psychosocial level? Do we care for them in a manner that empowers them, it makes them feel seen, makes them have purpose in their life, the ability to say no adamantly with absolute understanding of what that means in terms of personal power? It's a lot to ask of a little person, and they require a lot of support in order to get to that solid standing. I mean, a lot of these kids, of course, grow up in communities with enormous socioeconomic issues and are presented with dangerous opportunities for role modeling, and all of that needs to be addressed in order to just put a stop to what can unfortunately become a very, very downward trajectory very quickly.
With Child Protection Week in mind, I guess these ECD centres can often be the first line in terms of spotting signs of things like neglect, maybe even abuse, and developmental issues.
Exactly, and that's why this training in perceptual skills is so important. Perceptual skills are visual, auditory, tactile, spatial, body awareness, and all of these can be impacted upon visually by, as you quite rightly just touched on, I mean, God forbid, abuse and neglect. And what that translates to is children underachieving academically because of these desperate emotional issues, the psychosocial skills that they need to develop, the interpersonal well-being, nurturing relationships, empathy, responsive caregiving of their peers, a sense of belonging, and even the ability to be close to others without fear, without, just absolute terror, really. So yes, it does. It's softer than we assume. It's softer than simply literacy and numeracy. For a child to succeed in those goals, in those fields of education, they need to be sitting on a very solid emotional support. Sorry, I'm not sure what that
I suppose also teaching young children their rights, because they are also citizens, and to teach them how to speak up when something doesn't feel right.
When we identify children at risk, it has the ability then to trigger this early intervention and can change the trajectory of the child's life. It can reverse the effects of deprivation, developmental gaps, reduce the need for costly interventions, remedial support later in life, and ultimately it gives children a far better chance to thrive. I mean, we're talking about demand on the judicial system being one of the results of neglecting children's needs based on these terrible fallouts of the socioeconomic circumstances they find themselves in. I mean, of course, ECDs need to also address the very basics. I mean, President Ramaphosa recently spoke to this at the Banapele Leadership Summit in March about the holistic approach, ensuring that children don't only receive education, but also proper nutrition, healthcare, a safe environment. And that safe environment is what we're talking to this month specifically. And I do believe that that is supported, again, by the correct training of these incredible women who care for other women's children out of the goodness of their hearts, largely with insufficient training and resources.
Yeah, I mean, this raises my next concern and worry, because there are some women out there who have a large heart and are probably running informal ECD centers just to look after the children in their communities. What can be done to assist, help, and maybe help raise the formalities so that the training gets to these very important people?
The first step is registration. I support the Minister, Khwarube, in her Banapele focus. Children first is what it means, and we do need to have these ECD centers registered so that the training needs can be adequately identified, so that resources like the 10 billion rand can be adequately allocated where need is most dire. We know in terms of the Santa Shoebox project that need, the most dire need, is in rural areas, which are often the most difficult to access. It's difficult to get trainers out, 500 kilometers from the nearest city to do adequate training, but it's not impossible. We certainly focus our energies largely in rural areas, and there are many other NPOs filling in the gap, really, of what the department has not been able to achieve to date. But I certainly do agree with Minister Khwarube that registering the ECDs is the first step in addressing the shortfall. There's a hope and a plan, I assume, in place to ensure that another 10,000 ECDs are registered before the end of the year. So that'll, at the moment it's just over half, about 55% of the 42,500 ECDs that are registered. So another 10,000 of those will go a long way to achieving the goal of the 2030 deadline for equal access to quality ECD education for all children in South Africa. That's another 1.3 million children who are currently not receiving that.
I think you may have given us some clues already for my next question. As we head into Child Protection Week, what would you like to see prioritized at a policy level to strengthen the ECD sector?
It's training, Peter. It comes down to knowledge. It always does. When we know better, we do better. I think while the National Curriculum Framework, as I touched on, is an excellent resource, NPOs working in the ECD space need support. It's financial donations, it's offers of expertise, it's offers of resources, things as basic as a truck to deliver teaching aids to far-flung ECDs, rural ECDs. But from a policy level, focus on education, on training. Isn't it ironic? We're talking about improving education. Where do we need to start? Not with the learners, but with the teachers.
Deb, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program today, and let's hope that some of what you've said falls on the right ears that can sign things into law.
That's why I talk to you, Peter, for that exact reason. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much. That's Deb Zelezniak, Chief Executive Officer of the Santa Shoebox Project, speaking to us ahead of South Africa's Child Protection Week, National Child Protection Week. Okay, it's a little bit before 9 o'clock, which means it's time to welcome Benjamin Mushatama, who's looking...
You've joined the band.
He's looking very nice and bright and orange and clean cut, and my goodness.
Trying to be like you, Peter.
How are you today, and what's happening on the move?
All right, we've got a very cool feature that we call In the Cubicle, where we look at kind of the intricacies of the workplace. When we get thrown into the workplace, nobody tells you how difficult the workplace is and how to navigate the politics of the workplace. Some of us just keep ourselves mum, others just kind of are very confrontational, There's so many ways to approach the workplace. So we're going to be looking at something very interesting. Today is International Human Resource Day. And that's what we want to talk about today. Human resource departments. They're a little bit weird, right? Because you would think they represent the worker. But do they or don't they? Do they represent the employer or do they represent the employee?
Yes,
and many workers find themselves in the middle of that, not knowing if they should trust HR or not.
It's an interesting dynamic, actually, that you raise, because there are executives and they are paid by the company, and they are management. And you often see the trade unions filling in the role of adversaries to, and guess who they talk to when the the trade unions, they go to
they're
the
negotiating. They go into HR departments. Yeah,
it's fascinating. I never thought about it before, but you're so right.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at that, and also how do you confront HR with certain sensitive issues?
Yeah,
do you go
I was actually coming to that. There's a bit of sometimes a fear on how do you approach them when you really have a challenge.
Sure.
Because by the time it gets to HR, I imagine it's now been a big challenge for a long time. It's been overwhelming.
Yeah.
And there's an intimidation there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be an interesting conversation.
And also, and you can ask this because you often find some HR people, because of the hats they're wearing, advise people, are you sure you want to go ahead with this? Do you know what I mean?
And which is kind of like a serious issue, and you're like, what do you mean?
Do you really want to? Because this can happen, this can happen.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, we have to get to the top of this.
Yeah.
There's almost like a hat they wear trying to protect the reputation of the organization, etc., etc.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be fascinated to hear what this conversation
So
does.
you're talking about this on the perspective of the workers or employees?
Both,
employers,
both, yeah.
But not on the perspective of HR personnel?
I think all of them. I think all of them are in kind of a conundrum, aren't they?
Do you think you can have all three in the same conversation? I think you need to separate it. Have the two. But anyway, I'm not the producer for the show.
But I am curious about which hat they wear.
Yes.
Is it for the company or is it for the employees? Because if they pick a side, they have picked a side. And I'm not sure that there's a halfway, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think they really, I'm going to be kind of my normal self, being honest. I don't think they really are there to represent the worker. I think they are there to represent the interest of the company. But then how do you as a worker find yourself navigating that dynamic? Yeah.
I'll go to my foreman.
Yeah, no.
All right, so that's what's coming up with Brother Benjamin and Sister Palesa at just after the 9 o'clock news. But from me and Asanda, Beda.
And you leaving me tomorrow?
Yes, I'll be. Next time you hear me, I'll be in Tanzania. Because the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the annual Thabo Mbeki lecture is taking place for the first time outside South Africa, and it's going to be in Tanzania. So we'll give you details of who's speaking, and we'll be chatting to people there.
Wonderful.
Lovely. That's the thing. Digitization and technology.
Is minimum temperature at night, 22 degrees.
At the moment.
Yeah, it's warm then, very humid.
Well, you're going to have safe travels, and we'll connect via technology on the show. So that's it from us. Bye from Rise and Shine. 9 o'clock it is, Central African time. Good morning on Ellen Zinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Looking at top stories this hour, South Africa's president prepared for meeting with U.S. president, and the U.S. ends deportation protection for nearly 350,000 Venezuelan immigrants. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. A spokesperson for South Africa's President, Vincent Magwenya, says President Cyril Ramaphosa is highly enthused, prepared for this moment, and looking forward to meeting U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House tomorrow. President Ramaphosa landed at John Base Anders just outside Washington and is expected to receive briefings from various ministers who have also arrived to support his engagement in the United States. Sharon Bryce-Peace reports that the details on the Wednesday program will become clearer later today.
President Ramaphosa was expected to receive a comprehensive briefing from various ministers, including Ronald Lamola of International Relations, who was expected to arrive in the USA directly from bilateral meetings in France and the Netherlands. While there are a number of vexing issues, including the Afrikaner refugee matter, the delegation is laser-focused on moving the economic relationship forward, either within the